right, good morning, everybody. I'm Vince Devall with Eagle Homes on the Eagle Homes or Eagle Nest podcast. Boy, I almost killed that one today. Anyways, I'm here with Mr.
Brad Brewer, and just in case you didn't catch that, we are Eagle Homes team, brokered by Coldwell Banker Realty. Another wonderful, sunshiny Monday morning. I'm only commenting on the weather because I'm pretty sure, which is okay, people, it's all right. Forecasted to rain a lot this next 7 to 10 days, but it is spring, so that's okay. Because by July, we'll start hearing the comments. Oh my goodness, we need rain. Browns Lake will be down 1.5 feet. All that good stuff. So,
Tough life.
particular.
All right, so today we are going to cover the NAR ruling a little bit and how it affects our buyers and sellers in today's market. I'm kind of excited to be talking about this today, and I'm sure there's going to be tons of changes, and it's going to be evolving as we come, as it gets closer to going live and becoming something we really have to focus on and talk about to our clients or customers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of excited about this, Brad. So the question is to pay or not to pay. I love that little header. To pay or not to pay is the question. So Brad, tell us, what do you know about that AR lawsuit? What is it? How's it, give us a brief overview.
There were several different lawsuits out there. I will be first to tell you, I have not read up on every single one.
Yeah, me neither.
But the one that's creating some changes the way that and when Vince says NAR, for those non-real estate people, National Association of Realtors. So as a realtor, we belong to associations that allow us to practice our craft. They do a number of different things as far as lobby for laws, help monitor laws. There's a lot of other things, education. There's a lot of different things they do to help realtors. That filters down to state and local associations as well. But everything kind of rolls up to NAR, National Association of Realtors. So the main lawsuit, I call it the main lawsuit. I don't even know if it is, to be honest with you. But basically, it comes down to price fixing is what they were calling it.
Correct.
Essentially is. Agents would go into your house, say, oh, it's my commission's 6% and you have to give this, or you're gonna do this. You've got to pay the buyer's agent, which by the way, has always been not correct.
Always been negotiable.
It's always been negotiable. And I think it depends on how agents have spoke about it.
Right.
They're trying to get us to move away from saying usual or this is what it is or things like that. I personally don't really have an issue, and you can chime in on this. I don't really have an issue with the whole word usual, typical, things like that. There's been some comments about removing that language. Well, the fact of the matter is, in our area, the
usual or typical,
standard, common, whatever you want to say, amount a seller within their listing agreement with their agent would agree to pay a buyer's agent or sub-agent, and there's a difference, has been 2.4% in our area. Down in Illinois, it's commonly 2.5%, I believe.
Correct.
I know Madison area, it's 2.5 or 3, depending on what the commission structure is with the listing agent. So the change now is they've decided, and part of the settlement is we're not even going to be able to advertise starting July, which I think
No, it got moved to August.
Didn't get moved to August. Okay.
Got moved to August.
I know
14th now or 17th.
I saw on Friday the settlement got approved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it Friday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the settlement for our brokerage got approved. The NAR settlement has not been approved.
Okay. So this is all assumption, by the way, assuming this gets approved and will go into effect August
14th, 17th. I can't remember the exact date.
Normally if an agent looks at our version of the MLS spec sheet, it will show what the seller and therefore seller agency is offering. And I've seen less than 2%, but you usually see somewhere between 2 and 2.4% are again. You can't even show it on there. So we're gonna have to market the commissions and letting buyer's agents know, one, if there's being anything offered, what it is in a different way. So it's a good. I'll let you add anything
That's a
to it.
great way to, yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Feel like I'm
So
missing something in that, but
no, and so the question then becomes, with everything with all the changes that are happening, how does it affect you as a buyer? How does it affect you as a seller? And and how are we as agents going to communicate that? Because
mhm.
I think the biggest thing is we're looking at, sellers or buyers are going, well, why do I want to work with an agent if I can go directly to the seller's agent? And
Can I answer that?
yeah,
Because I'm gonna go back in history a little bit. And Wisconsin, by the way, is a little different from other states. Which this is one thing I didn't mention with the settlement that may be a little bit different in Wisconsin. So anyway, back in the sixties, there really wasn't buyer agency. I'm not sure exactly the time frame. This is before I was born and way before I got into the industry. Um, you would just hire a listing agent to list your house. Typically, buyers would come just straight to the listing agent, open houses, call them, whatever. Back when there weren't these fancy things, and we were tied to home office lines, all that good stuff, right?
yep,
Back in that day, there was a high rate of lawsuits because buyers weren't being represented. It's the first topic actually on some summary stuff we're gonna go over is, fiduciary responsibility. The listing agent, of course, has a fiduciary responsibility in representing their client, the seller. The buyers weren't getting representation, so they were coming back afterwards and suing. I believe it's a very similar to today. If you sell your house yourself for sale by owners, 30 and you true for sale by owner, agents don't get involved. You don't list it. 33% end up in court. There's some type of lawsuit for misrepresentations, all kinds of different things, right?
right.
That being said, so that's when buyer agency came into play. And it's traditionally, historically, 99% of the time been paid by the seller.
Right.
But, but seller's agency essentially, but ultimately the seller comes out of the seller's proceeds.
Yeah. So let's talk about it as a buyer. There's two types of buyers that we represent. And
Correct.
it's a client versus customer. And we can go, I don't know if we have enough time to go into the details of a client versus customer, but let's talk about the main, what are the 4 or 5 main key points in there, and maybe one a small difference between client versus customer without going in like down the full rabbit hole, how that could affect us or examples.
And then this is where we can touch on pre-agency as well, which is a
Right.
Wisconsin, seems to be, I'm told it's kind of a very Wisconsin specific thing.
Yeah.
Might not be, this is what I'm told. I was practice real estate in Wisconsin, so speak for that, which is, I'm guessing the majority of our audience as well. So go ahead.
As a buyer, the first one you said is our fiduciary duties of an agent. That is probably the biggest one. I don't know. They're all important in their own way, but fiduciary duties of an agent. And as a client, so someone that we are representing. So let's distinguish between client versus customer.
Client is in a very simple format. We have an actual buyer agency agreement with you.
Yep.
To represent you and your best interests.
Right.
What the first one we're going to, of course, talking about. There's several best interest areas you can talk about, which we are going to go through.
Yep.
Several, maybe not all inclusive, but several. Is that fiduciary responsibility?
And so the biggest
Probably the big one.
Yeah. So the biggest one is with that responsibility. If you are a client, we owe you that responsibility. If you're a customer, we give 2 shits. I mean, maybe not quite like that, but as our client, with loyalty, confidentiality, and acting in the best interest of you ahead of our own. So, for example, if Brian and I are looking at investment properties and you reach out to us and go, Vince, I want to see 123 Banana Road. We're gonna go walk you through that property and we're going to be representing you in your best interest ahead of ours, even if we're sitting there going, man, I want to talk them out of this property because I want to buy this for my portfolio. So that's huge, right?
Yeah.
So we're representing you ahead of our own, and we're also representing you ahead of our own when it comes to evaluating the property, evaluating the price you might offer, condition, things like that, because we're representing, we're putting your interests ahead of us even getting paid. Right.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
I can tell you how many times I do that. We walk in, you could visually see that the water's taking in the basement, the water's coming in the basement, right? And people may love the house, except they're like, the basement's taking water. Then we have to start talking about how that might be an issue. So fiduciary duties of an agent.
Yeah, that's essentially the client part, and that goes in a number of different ways. It's negotiating, looking out for you for inspections. Again, fiduciary is financial, right? So we're looking at for your financial best interest. Customer, and I always give this example because when I take a listing, they sign a listing agreement that, I cannot represent another person as a client.
Right.
I always do that. It's the only way that can potentially not occur then, once I've done that, is if I have a buyer, I'm already working with them, we have a buyer agency agreement, they happen to like the house I'm listing. Then I have to go back and get permission in writing from both people. But the issue there is I basically become what's called a lame duck. Then they both honestly they're not, but they both become customers. In the sense of, as a customer, someone comes to an open house on my listing, just says, hey, I'd like to buy it, not work with an agent. Okay, great. I can walk through the process. I can write up the offer for them. I cannot discuss anything as far as negotiations. That's again back to inspections, the price of the purchasing the house, asking for credits, whatever. It's kind of like I'm saying, well, all right, this house is listed for $340.
Right.
Well, what do you think I should offer? What do you think the seller would take? I don't know. I mean, I do probably know, but my answer is, I don't know. What would you like to offer? And I will present it to them.
Right.
That's all you can do with a customer.
Yep.
And that's okay. I've done 10% about in my career of my transactions. How to do that. I give the customer a good service, and I make it very clear they actually have to sign documents stating that they're a customer.
Yep.
And that I cannot negotiate that, and I can't.
Yeah.
Only if a seller says to me, yeah, tell them, just we can negotiate that. Go ahead and tell them we'll take, $335.
Right.
Or whatever. So that's kind of the difference essentially with a customer and fiduciary responsibility is cannot in any way assist you in what might cause my client a financial harm.
Right. Yeah. So next, contractual agreements.
Mhm.
So with a client, they are obviously signing something saying that we are going to work for them in our best interest, and you as a client are willing to compensate us X percentage or X dollars, right? Now what that means is we have specific duties and obligations to you. And what are some of those things, Brad? What's that look like?
On the client end, your contractually, of course, then you have an actual written agreement.
Right.
It is whether you're whether it's a buyer agency agreement or the listing agreement. And then you have whatever is contractually obligated in the contract, listing agreement, marketing the property, right?
Yep.
And you're gonna spend money there. There's disclosure of material adverse facts. I'm laughing because I had a client the other day asked me something that really is really borderline whether it should go in the condition report or not, but he told me about it. So I'm like, well, if you wouldn't have told me that, you could have left it out because it was a thing that got fixed. It was minimal. But I'm like, you just told me about it, put it in the condition report.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not going to be an issue, but just because we have to disclose those facts, by the way, to either party, but it's something we have to be aware of. To your point, whether we think they should buy a house or not, that is not part of our contract. Our contract is to advise.
Yeah.
You mentioned the water thing. That would be, of course, a material adverse fact on the property. They saw it, of course, but you have to speak about this.
Right.
And you have to speak about it where you're speaking in the best interest. I get it. Every agent wants to get the deal done, get them in their house, which is gonna make the client happy, but the worst thing you want in the world is a client to come back. So that's our obligation is look out.
Yeah. So advice and advocacy, right?
Mhm.
So that's the next biggest one. As our client, we are giving you advice. We are, advocating on your best interest when it comes to the deal and it, if it is, we're trying to get you in a house, we're trying to negotiate for you.
Mhm.
We're going to give you advice on, is it market analysis? So what's the comparables? Are you offering a fair market price? What's that look like? We're going to give you advice on what we should have inspected. And, even after we get inspection done, we're going to walk through the inspection report with you and say, okay, are these safety defects, right? That's usually what we're asking for is safety defects. We're not asking for, hey, this wall behind me is a dark blue.
Okay.
Can we get them to paint it? No, you knew it was a dark blue when you made the offer. It is what it is, right? You can get a paintbrush or hire somebody.
Yeah.
As a customer, that advice is very, very limited. We can give general market information, stuff that kind of can be public record, days on market, things like that. But when it comes to negotiating price, negotiating condition, inspections, nope, not happening.
So another thing that this kind of goes back to the contractual obligation, but it's the whole advice and advocacy thing. A customer, I'm not always in tune to really looking at the future. And what I mean by that is when I go in with a client, I'll tell them, wow, this house is basically done. Like where, so, because I get a lot of, you get a lot of questions from potential clients, just people in general, public, friends, whatever. When's the market gonna dip?
Right.
Truth of the answer is not sure. The industry experts could be, last projections I heard was you could see, and again, prefacing this a dip, which we're talking 1, 2, 3, maybe 5% when it does dip. That being said, so I'm always looking out for my clients and saying, hey, you buy this today, there's nothing to do here that's probably going to increase value.
Yeah.
So you're basically riding the market. So if you keep this for 3 years and it does end up dipping a little bit, you could put yourself in a negative equity position, potentially. I just want to make you aware of that. If you truly believe you're going to be here for 10 plus years, it's probably a non-factor. I mean, ultimately, as a buyer, you want to like the home, right?
Yep.
But I'm there to give you that advice to say, like, hey, just want to make you aware of this. Or I like to point out things that, by the way, it doesn't have a finished basement. Finish the basement or finish part of the basement, you're going to add value.
Right. Yeah.
How can you add value, right?
Yep.
So anyway, the customer, we don't have to do that. Sometimes we don't.
Correct. So let's jump in. We're going to briefly talk into the last two topics here for the buyer agency and what that means. And then I want to jump into the seller
Yep.
and why we should offer buyer commission. And then what happens if there's no buyer commission that's offered for the seller. So the last couple is a higher level of representation, which we've kind of covered a lot of that on really us digging into the nuts and bolts of the house. And then a reduction in risk, right?
Yeah.
We are helping you reduce your risk when it comes to compliance, legal standards, disclosures, and so forth as your client. As a customer, we just have basic legal and ethical obligations.
Yes.
So, I guess the question is, do you want an attorney representing you that they're just getting like WebMD or something like that? Do you want to go to WebMD and say, hey, I'm buying this, I have this pain in my gut. What should I do? Right. Or do you want to actually go to your doctor and have them inspect you? So I think that's a great way to look at it. We're giving you full hands-on service where, if you are a customer, it is very limited knowledge, very little experience. We're very little experience we're sharing with you and things like that. So jumping into the seller side of things, as a seller, you no longer have to, as of August 17th, I looked it up. It's August 17th is when it will no longer be advertised in the MLS of what that seller commission or buyer commission is. And it's getting voted on and it'll actually get ruled on in November. So I don't know why they're waiting so long. But so as a seller, Brad, why would you want to offer a buyer commission?
It's my number one thing I've been telling people is it's a form of marketing.
Got,
And I go right to statistics, and I've been telling sellers this as it comes up. Actually, I've been telling them anyway, because they're a client. 81% of buyers find homes through two sources. Online, which has become growing, 52%. The other 29% make up that 81% of where all buyers find their home.
19%, 81 plus 19 is 100.
Well, no, 29%, 52 and 29.
Oh, 52 and 29,
Yeah.
sorry. You said 81 and 29.
Sorry, my misspoke there. 52% find the homes online.
Yep,
That's agent websites, various whatever.
Realtor.com.
Zillow, all
Yeah,
that
so,
stuff, right?
yeah,
The other 29%, the next biggest area is actually agents.
okay,
So you want other agents to be motivated. Now, are they not going to do it? And well, maybe they won't. If I'm not offered a commission, I'm not certainly not going to point it out to my client. I
Yeah.
don't have to. Well, I don't really have to. I'm also not motivated to. Now, would I point it out? Yeah, I feel like there is an ethical obligation to point it out.
100%.
But I'm also going to let my client know they're not offering me commission. Unfortunately, I can't work for free. So if we can't negotiate that to pay me, I'm not going to help you with it.
Yeah,
And that's then like your client's choice.
Yep.
Which then we can go into all the different reasons why that's important and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And
yeah.
a lot of the stuff we covered.
Yeah, we'll go
So-
into why the buyer, how to, if you're the buyer, how to overcome that obstacle of no buyer agency commission being offered.
Yeah.
So, also as a seller, Brad talked about the marketing aspect and getting in front of the other, agents. Also, it's probably going to bring you a higher priced offer.
Yeah.
Because now the seller or the buyer doesn't have to figure out how to pay that commission. If you're not going to offer it, now the seller's taking $5,000 out of their pocket to pay that commission, or 10,000, whatever it looks like, right? They're now taking that out of their pocket to pay that commission. And now you're more than likely going to get offered less because now they have less money to put down.
Mhm.
Also, keep in mind, you are now limiting your buyer pool. Because if a buyer has to put $20,000 down on a house,
Mhm.
just saying, and now all of a sudden they have to use $10,000 to pay their agent, they just went from your $300,000 house to a $200,000 house.
Right, because one thing you have to remember, most buyers who aren't paying cash also have loan processing fees, which can equate to as much or more or a little bit less than the commission.
Yeah,
So like I said, you're already having to put 10%, 20%, 5%, whatever your percent down, and then another whatever to cover all the other costs.
yeah,
So yeah, you're limiting your buyer tool because your homes became less affordable to more people.
yep. And that is a challenge we're having in today's market. Not only are we having a supply and demand issue or a supply issue, the demand's there. Like
Yeah.
we have buyers coming out the wazoo, even at 7% interest rates. Everyone's like, 7%, I'm gonna wait for the houses to drop. But let's be real, people. The homes are still appreciating. So
They are, which, I mean, again,
different topic.
to me, this all comes down to is it's offering that to the buyer's agents is, again, that 29%, probably more because there's a number of different factors in there.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like with for sale by owners, especially Wisconsin, you can't put your home on Zillow. I see the pickup on Marketplace. You're missing a mass amount of your audience.
Yeah.
Mass amount, which again, that's why you end up with a lower purchase price. So
Right.
it's ultimately going to affect it. The value is there to pay that. And we could go on this for 5 minutes because I've gotten in these lengthy discussions with really wise sellers that have really good questions. So what do you do? How do you do it? Well, we can meet on that, but that's really important.
yeah. So then, let's say a seller says, you know what, Brad, there's absolutely no way I'm offering a buyer agency commission. But you know what? I've lived in my house 30 years. Why should they get any of my money? Well, I think then it comes down to how do we help our buyers navigate that? They found the house they love. We write a buyer agency in there of 2.4%. What do we do? How do they come back, go, nope, we're not paying it. How are we going to help write that into a negotiation? What are some different ways we can do that?
Well, I think the laws are gonna change with the ruling. We used to write in as a, into their, you know, buy or seller or seller's agent to pay buyer agency
Right.
commission amount,
Yep.
or whatever your buyer agency stated. It's probably gonna be similar. There might be some language changes we're gonna have to do that'll all come out from all the smart people in our state. That require that, but that's essentially how it's gonna be done. Um, Problem is, we used to know, like, it used to be just negotiating, like, oh, well, if they're offering 1.8% for some reason, I'm like, well, I want my 2.4.
Right.
It was more negotiating how much. Now it's, which we had to word it a specific way because we didn't used to be able to negotiate. Now they're gonna tell us we can negotiate. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But you kind of, you could be going in blind because if I can't get out to you, Vince, because you're an agent I never worked with before, you're not getting my email marketing. You're gonna be like, oh.
Well, and I think so. If a seller doesn't offer a buyer agency commission, right? If seller says no, we're not doing it, and you write it in, they say no, we're not doing it. The next thing is we offer, maybe list price or a little bit less with a seller credit.
Yep.
A seller credit. So we write it in saying, hey, we want $7,000 in seller credits. Now, what that's used for is completely up to the seller. It can be used to offset their closing costs. It can be used to pay our agency commission, whatever it might be. And it's all going to be relevant, right? Like, let's be honest. If I get a buyer today and I show them one house we write an offer, we get it accepted. Maybe I'm going to write it in as a 2% buyer agency commission. Didn't do a lot of work. Didn't take a lot. But if I've been working with a buyer, which I have some buyers I've been working with for 2 years, if I've been working with you for 2 years, I may ask for that 2.4. Or if the house is a $1 million house, I may write in that, hey, I only want 1.5 because I'm still getting paid. I did my work. But let's see if we can negotiate this and win this offer because I'm going to take less commission.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's not the standard 2.4 or 2.5 or 3.0. So there's different ways us as your agent can help navigate that loophole and work through that challenge that we're going to be facing. And if your agent today, guys, let me tell you this: if your agent today is not having this conversation with you, you're working with the wrong person. I'm sorry to say. Agents out there, if you're listening, if you're out there and you're working with clients right now, you should be starting to prepare them because there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to find them a house in the next 3 months or 4 months. So you need to start preparing them for what that might look like if you don't find that house for them. Even though you might have that agreement, in writing today, doesn't mean it has to be offered in August, November.
And I've already done this. I know you've done this already. And because it is important to have those conversations with our buyers. I've told buyers, here are going to be the options. We negotiate it in, you pay for it, or if we just can't, then maybe you choose not to work with me. Because I can't do it for free.
Right.
Because insurance has to be paid for. We're insured.
Yeah.
Right? So, I have to, I have to earn an income. So, that's, you would never ask, you wouldn't like it if I asked you to go to work and not earn an income. So it's the same thing for us. So we have to earn income. Again, I will always work with my buyers the best I can, but we have to have honest conversations. And those honest conversations we have to have is, well, here's your 3 choices, essentially. Get it negotiated in if they're not offering it. I think a majority have offered it. And I think a majority will still offer it.
Yeah.
Because I think they'll see the value of that 29% is huge. And I'll go ahead and tell other agents that I don't care to say it out loud. I want to speak to other agents and say 29%. That's where you just lost 29% of your potential buyer pool. Because no, I'm not gonna, if nothing's offered, and I don't have a responsibility to. I'm not putting it out to them, but also gonna tell my client, by the way, they're not offering anything. So now we're gonna be in scenarios 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
Negotiate it, you pay it, or good luck on your own.
We get seller concession. Yeah. So it's going to be a hot topic over the next couple months as we start to navigate that part of the market. And it's going to be interesting. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be interesting, but you need to have that conversation today with your agent.
Yeah.
It needs to happen today because, if you find your perfect house in a month, congratulations. you nailed it. You got, I'm not gonna say you got lucky, you just found the right place. You were in a market that had more, more supply. But if you're looking for something particular, it's gonna be a tricky conversation.
I'll say this and then we'll wrap up. Because, by the way, this is always potentially could have happened. I've seen two already that it said they were offering 0, but then they noted commissions are negotiable.
Yep.
So we're already seeing just the small sampling of people who are already not listing any commission available.
Yep.
To the buyer's agent are basically saying it's just negotiable.
Yep.
So I don't think it's good. One of our brokers, one of our very smart brokers, also a good attorney. He's like, there's gonna be about 12 to 18 months of wonkiness, then things will probably settle into whatever the new norm, back to norm, whatever it is.
Yeah. So anyways, hey, everyone have a great week. I'm Vince Devall with the Eagle Homes and the Eagle's Nest podcast.
I'm Brad Brewer. If you have any other questions on this or any other matters, please reach out to us. We're always happy to talk.
Have a great week, everyone. Bye.